This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on the Twitters.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast.
I hadn't done that in a while. I figured I'd throw a wrench in there.
That's true. You did throw a wrench.
It messes you up every time.
It
So
it does. It does. It does. Anyway, welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com and find the blog at obsessiveviewer.com. And you can also subscribe to the subreddit at r/obsessiveviewer. And if you want to help support the podcast, you can now do that with a nice new donate button that I put on obsessiveviewer.com.
AKA prostitute button.
Yes. It's a simple link. You just click it, and then you can go make a one-time donation or monthly recurring donation via PayPal. Via PayPal, and, it's as simple as that. And I think you can also just use regular credit cards, which, if you're in the giving mood, that would be great.
It is that time of year.
It isn't, but, yeah.
Well, it's gonna be.
Right. Or if you don't want to do the donate button, you can also go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Or if you don't want to actually spend money, you can just leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps us out a ton. So, on this week's episode of the podcast, we are going to be talking about TV Neighbors.
Word.
Yes, and that is very exciting. However, before we do that, we have some general housekeeping and feedback stuff and self-promotion stuff to do. Just really quickly. One is that here in October 14th, at the Irving Theater, we're going to be hosting Shocktober in Irvington 3. That is a one-night event screening of short horror films from local filmmakers, and we're going to be raffling off prizes. There's going to be DVDs, Blu-rays, gift cards to Irvington businesses, a lot of fun stuff, and it's always a blast to do it. And this year, I think I got word from Pat that they've finished writing the first draft of their short film that they're going to do.
Awesome.
Pat and Tyler from the Nerds You're Looking For podcast. And Matt Quiet from Nerds Domain also reached out to me about potentially doing a short film. So we're going to have a lot of good stuff there. We're also going to premiere JPLX's new short film, The Roman, and also Intruder 3 from Snapshot Productions. So it's going to be a blast. And I kind of buried the lead here, but tickets are on sale right now.
Yep. Yeah,
at shocktoberinirvington.com. It's going to be a blast. Second notice that we have to make is we had an iTunes an iTunes review giveaway thing that we kind of did half-assed. And it's I'm pleased to announce that friend of the show, Tony Troxel, is the winner. He's going to win a $10 Amazon gift card when I get paid.
Very cool.
Yeah, he had a very nice review, and you can find him on Twitter at Indiana Geeking. Yeah, so congratulations, and you will get your Amazon, I keep saying iTunes, your Amazon gift card soon. And finally, I was a guest on Submitted for Your Approval, an excellent Twilight Zone podcast. I joined host Brandon Cruz to talk about the season 1 episode Execution, and I had a really good time doing it, and I highly recommend checking it out, after you check out my solo side project podcast reviewing the Twilight Zone called Anthology at anthologypod.com. So, having said all that, do you want to postpone the topic a little bit more to do news?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, nice. I switched around on the seat. Anyway, nice. You look like you were about to say something before that.
No.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Okay. Nice. All right, cool. So I only have a couple news things to really bring up here. One is that I posted some pictures to your, I sent you some pictures from onto Messenger. What did you think of those pictures, Tiny? That sounds so much dirtier than I thought.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah. I was gonna say something, but I'm trying to keep my mind out of the gutter.
Yeah,
they were so hot.
Jesus.
No, because Idris Elba looks really hot in a duster in the New York City heat.
Yes. We are, of course,
also a little dirty.
A little bit, yeah. We are not doing well here.
This is digging a hole.
Right. To clarify, I shared some pictures that surfaced of Idris Elba on the set of the Dark Tower movie as Roland Deschain filming an action scene, and this movie's happening. This movie is happening.
He's literally slinging a gun.
Right.
Which is the title of the first book of the Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger,
Oh, yes.
for those who don't know.
Right. And it's so amazing to me to see these images.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, Tiny, I have been very vocal. How would you characterize me regarding, like, people looking up information about the production of movies?
I'm trying to think of an analogy.
Okay.
Or, I don't know, something to compare you to. But, easily perturbed.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Okay, so foot in my mouth. Every time I see images or articles or little tidbits of information about this movie, it's like a kid on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I've seen there's some images that have surfaced that are of the set, and like the implications of those to what this adaptation is are just mind-blowing to me, and it makes me, if I wasn't so excited for this, I would be nervous about how they're handling it, because they're clearly picking things from different things. But oh my god, this movie, I can't wait. Tiny, what do you think?
Me too. Yeah, and I told myself I wasn't gonna hang on every article or every new set photo that was released. I told myself I wasn't gonna do that, and of course I violated it. This has just been such a long time coming, and I mean, you and I are relatively new fans to it. There's some people who've been reading this series since the 80s. So, I mean, this is a long time coming for a lot of people. And I mean, we each read the series at pretty much the same time, and we finished that, 7 years ago, maybe?
Oh, man, has it been that long?
Maybe 5.
I want to say 5 or 6, yeah. Wow.
Maybe 5 or 6, but yeah, I mean, and we immediately, once we started reading it, we were like, this will be a great movie.
Oh, yeah.
Can't wait to see what they're going to do for the series or whatever. Like, like we immediately started having those conversations. And so we've spent, I would say, hours going on a full day talking about this series.
I would go so far as to say days.
Oh, days, really?
You have to keep in mind, Tiny, we worked together.
Yes, we did.
You think 8-hour shifts, about 4 to 6 of those were spent just talking about the stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Multiple weeks. We both read the series over the course of maybe a year. It's days of our lives.
Yeah,
Tiny.
You're probably right.
Yeah, The Bold and the Beautiful. I don't know why I threw that in there. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But it's so, I'm so eager to see how it turns out. And I'm just, I don't know. We'll always have the books, so if it sucks, it sucks, but
right.
It's freaking Idris Elba, though.
I know, yeah.
So great.
So the set pictures and all the news and all that stuff has been very satisfying.
Yep, I agree. And, do we have any more about the Dark? Well, we do, but...
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Let's save that for another day.
That'll be another day, yeah.
So our last piece of news is actually kind of one that I want to talk about because it's kind of irritating me a little bit. So Variety... and like the news outlets just generally, this one's from Variety, posted that the new CEO of MoviePass, which if you've been listening for a while, you'll know that I advocate for MoviePass pretty hard because back in, I think, December, I basically was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a year's worth of MoviePass, which for those who don't know, MoviePass is where you pay a fee of, in our area in Indianapolis, it's $30 per month. And for those $30 per month, you get a debit card from MoviePass in which you go to the movie theater, check in on the MoviePass app on your phone, you select one movie, and then you go in, pay with that debit card, and you get into the movie. And you can do this once every 24 hours. You can't repeat, you can't like see the same movie twice, or whatever. But if you see a lot of movies, as we are prone to do, hosting a podcast called The Obsessive Viewer, it pays for itself really, really quickly, and it's really easy to just go see a movie every day after work, and it's really satisfying and amazing. So anyway, all that is going to come crashing down, apparently, because MoviePass recently, they appointed a new CEO, this guy, Mitch Lowe, who I believe he is one of the co-founders of Netflix, I think.
Yeah.
I read that right? Yeah. So I'm just going to read briefly from this Variety article. Okay, quote, MoviePass's service, which costs between $30 and $40 per month to see an unlimited number of movies, has failed to firmly establish itself. It remains more of a niche offering than a national phenomenon. Lowe believes that the price point could be a stumbling block. He plans to experiment with a tiered system of packages, starting as low as $20 per month for access to a smaller collection of movies and extending to roughly $100 for unlimited films in 2D, 3D, and IMAX formats. He said, quote, "We need to experiment. Not every package will meet all the people's needs." End quote. This week, MoviePass began sending members in certain locations billing information for new services, some of which amounted to a price increase. Users in Los Angeles, for instance, were told that the new monthly plans included a $50 package for 6 2D or 3D movies and a $99 package for unlimited movies in any format. Tiny, you haven't been able to. You haven't gotten MoviePass, have you?
I have not.
How do you feel as an outsider about this news that they might be changing the pricing plans? How does that make you feel about the service after I've been talking about it to you nonstop for like 6 months?
I mean, I saw it coming. It was inevitable, really, because $40 a month, even in Los Angeles, that's four movies.
Right.
And there's probably people who see that in 4 days. And so, I mean, it's just it was just an unattainable or an untenable process. So, I mean, I kind of saw it coming, but
that's really, really true. In fact, I actually wrote in a long email to the /Filmcast just because they talked about something on one of their shows, just in passing about movie theater experiences or something. And I talked about it. They didn't respond or say anything on it, but whatever. No, but my whole thing was I've been struggling to figure out how this business model can sustain itself, because it's, like you said, it's $30-$40 a month. After 4 movies, it pays for itself. And part of that is they've done studies where it proves that gets more people into the theater during off hours than it would otherwise. Without MoviePass. So, and it's proven that it increases, concession sales, like some have seen, like 110% from what theaters normally have. And that makes perfect sense. In fact, I just saw a movie a couple days ago, and it's funny because if you have MoviePass at the price point now that it's at, and you have like an AMC Stubs reward thing, each payment of each card or each ticket counts toward your AMC Stubs. So technically you're only paying the $30 a month, but if you see 10 movies, you get $100 worth of movies on your Stubs account, which gives you $10 credit on Stubs, which I went and I got food and a drink when I saw a movie for free because I had Stubs rewards accumulated. So anyway, all of this is to say, maybe MoviePass isn't sustainable or anything, but the idea of them having, losing that unlimited amount, which that irritates me because, I mean, okay, part of the allure of it is having that unlimited amount of movies that you can see, or that unlimited quality to it. I would have never seen a good chunk of, well, not a good chunk, but probably a good chunk of the movies I've seen so far this year in theaters if it wasn't for MoviePass and just the fact that I could. And if I have to basically restrict myself to okay, I can only see X number of movies in a month, then that's going to completely defeat the purpose of it for me. And furthermore, this idea of them packaging in IMAX and 3D movies, one of the things I like about MoviePass is it doesn't count toward 3D or IMAX movies because I don't want to have to spend. I don't care about that. I don't care about IMAX or 3D unless it's something that I really am adamant about seeing. I'm not going to go see Tarzan in IMAX because MoviePass will let me for $100 a month. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I love seeing just regular movie theater experiences, and I don't know. It's troubling to me to see how it will go going forward, and it really irritates me that I spent $400 for a year of MoviePass, and if it changes, well, I guess I'm over halfway through that subscription. But if it changes and like I lose like the last 2 months of it because their plan changes drastically, then I will be very perturbed.
I would think you'd be grandfathered in because you
so.
paid that money as an agreement towards something,
right?
So that would be a violation of that if they change that for you. But right. I mean, it sounds like you can still, based on that, it sounds like you can still do unlimited movies, but the price is just going to go through the roof. And I mean, I think it makes sense, and I haven't been using it, so again, I'm seeing it as an outsider. Right. I can understand you're frustrated,
right?
And I'd be frustrated too.
Right. And okay, so $99 for unlimited movies in any format. That's one of the ones that he pitched. That's one of the ones that were in the email to people in Los Angeles and some other cities. $99 for unlimited movies in any format. Okay. I paid $400 for a year of unlimited movies. Mm-hmm. So to have to pay a quarter of that for 1 month is a big thing when I'm not going to be patronizing the larger formats or 3D formats hardly at all. Like, we just had a conversation about how I turned 30 and my eyesight is already seeming kind of weird. I don't want to have to watch, 3D movies.
It is like a ridiculous jump going from, if you're paying $30 a month, here's unlimited to like, that'd probably be, I don't know. Right. With the new package, it'd probably be 4 or 5 movies a month. Like, that's not really worth it.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, I think they'd be losing a ton of their base.
Yeah, and also, I'm coming at this from just a consumer perspective. I know literally nothing about the business side of it for them. So, I know that they just recently appointed this new CEO. For all I know, they could be just hemorrhaging money. Yeah. And they could be in severe, severe trouble. Yeah. And maybe this is what's causing this big thing. That's just conjecture on my part, because like I said, I don't know a damn thing.
Right, and who knows how much money they're for like if you go see a movie, and you're technically paying $10 for it. Right. How much is MoviePass paying to the theater? Right. Like, are they paying the full price of the ticket? I would imagine maybe they're not.
Yeah, but, I don't know.
I mean, are they paying half the price? They're paying 80% of it? Are they paying 9 out of $10? I mean, like what? Right. I mean, it depends on what that is. That's a huge factor that we don't know.
Totally, absolutely. So, but I think the point of all of this is I've grown accustomed to a lifestyle, and I don't want it to go away. Yeah. So anyway, that's our news segment for this week. Let us know what you think about The Dark Tower and MoviePass. Obviously, you can tweet us or email us or do whatever you like. Yep. Yeah. The information for that can be found at obsessiveviewer.com, where there is now a donate button. Hey. Hint, hint. I'm going to be insufferable for that from now on. Anyway, so this week's episode, Tiny, what are we talking about?
We're talking about TV Neighbors.
Yes.
So the career of Jim Neighbors. Jim Neighbors' television career. That was totally a Matt joke.
That was good. I did appreciate it.
It wasn't good. It was a Matt joke.
Do you know what I did? Wait. What? To both that joke and to you, I say nay.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway.
You went there.
I did.
Wordplay.
Anyway, if you're still listening, so I want to kind of talk just a little bit about the impetus for this topic, for this podcast. First, I have on the notes, impetus for the topic, the monsters are due on Maple Street and July 4th dicks.
Yeah.
So, Tiny, do you want to talk about your neighbors for just a second?
Oh my God. I posted a rant to Facebook, as us millennials are wont to do. Cause on 4th of July, that was a Monday, and I had to work the next day, because next day was a Tuesday, and it was like 2:30 in the morning, almost 3 in the morning, and my damn neighbors were still shooting off like mortars and bottle rockets, and like I'm a very light sleeper, and I could not go to sleep, and I had to be up at 7:30 in the morning, so I was like pissed. Like I went out on my balcony and yelled. I was an old man that night, and then Tuesday night they were doing the same thing at like 10 o'clock, and I was like, nope, nope, I'm gonna call the freaking cops. I was so mad because I just needed sleep.
Wow,
and people suck.
I had a similar experience. Like I heard distant fireworks all through the night of the 4th. I just pretended that I was in alternate 1985 from Back to the Future Part 2, where it's all where it's all grungy and everything. Anyway, so that was one of the things that kind of propelled this topic into our consciousness for talking about it. Anyway, and the other one is, as I mentioned, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. So, okay, I swear this is going to feed right into the plot, but I just want to say I've had Anthology, my solo side project podcast, where I'm basically going through the Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer. I've never seen the show, and I'm going through it episode by episode, and I'm reviewing it as a first-time viewer. I've had this podcast for almost a year at this point, but I've only released like 14 episodes at this point. So episode 17 of Anthology is going to cover episode 22 of the first season of The Twilight Zone, called The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Tiny, have you watched this episode yet?
I have not.
Okay, so I'm not going to give anything away. I just want to say really quickly that while watching The Twilight Zone, like watching The Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer, I'm going through it, and it's like it wasn't until I reached The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street that I thought, I kind of wonder if this podcast is going to be about me discovering one of my favorite shows of all time. Because, oh my god, this episode alone is freaking... It's... I'm only in the first season of a 5-season show. I'm 22 episodes into a 156 episode project of The Twilight Zone, and I don't know if I will... I don't know how there can be a more important episode of the show than The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
Wow.
Yes, it plays with so many themes and topics that resonate even today, especially today, but they were written as analogies or metaphors for Cold War and McCarthyism and the Blacklist, all of these things that Rod Serling went through and experienced and saw firsthand. Like, it went into this episode about these neighbors who are all... It's this amazing piece about groupthink and fear and paranoia, and it's one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen in my entire life.
Wow.
So look forward to my review of that on Anthology at anthologypod.com. That'll be episode 17 here in a few weeks. But anyway.
Well, and the great thing about Twilight Zone is that it's not like linear. So like each episode is standalone.
It is an anthology show.
So I mean, you can just... if
absolutely. Listeners
want, just go in and watch that episode and listen to your review, which I might do.
Please do.
Watch ahead and look at that.
Please do. Please do. It's like, seriously, in this, like, we're not a political podcast or anything, but like, there are events in the world that watching this episode will resonate with you because of events in the world. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's my soapbox for it. Watch The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Avoid the 2002 remake like the freaking plague. It's got Titus Welliver.
Okay.
And it's set in 2002, 2003. Turns it into a terrorism fear thing. Oh. And it's goofy. Listen to more of my thoughts on Anthology, episode 17.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, so that is our introduction to this topic. We are working off of a set list of 8 neighbors in the television realm. Tiny, I've been talking a lot, and I'm afraid that I'm losing people's attention by promoting my side project. So go ahead and bring us into the next one. If you say anything about the secular perspective.
Oh, that's hilarious. Secularperspective.com.
Damn it.
Well, I think in order to move on to the topic, we need to get a little bit more power in here. Uh-huh. As as Tim the Toolman Taylor was wont to do on a little show called Home Improvement. Yes, that's the second time I've used the word "want." I loved Home Improvement when I was a kid. Me and my brother watched it all the time.
Nice.
One of those after-school things or whatever. And on the show, almost every episode, Tim would go up to his fence and talk to his tall neighbor, Wilson. Right. And I always loved those moments because, Wilson's, I think the neighbors in shows like that kind of have this, like, this sage-like kind of quality to them, or like they're the voice of reason.
Totally.
And that's common amongst shows like this, especially sitcoms. It keeps the episodes and the characters grounded, and but it's always mixed in with comedy. It's always it's kind of a respite from the ridiculousness, if you will. But it still maintains the comedy. And Wilson was always that for the show. He always had some goofy hobby going on, like, oh, I'm painting African masks from whatever, or some goofy hobby, and it'd be silly, but like I said, he was always the voice of reason for Tim the Toolman Taylor.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we never saw his face, which...
Never saw his mouth.
Never saw his mouth. That's right. And that kind of drove me a little crazy as a kid.
Did it?
It did. I don't know what it was. It was just like I think part of it was I was fairly young at that point. And part of it was that I think my brain kind of thought, like, what's wrong with this face? Like, why is he so deformed that they don't want to show him on television?
That's funny.
Yeah. So when I grew older and I discovered IMDb, that was one of the first things I looked up.
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah. But yeah, he had this, just like you said, I'm gonna just basically regurgitate everything you just said. No, I like him as a sage voice of sage wisdom for Tim Taylor, especially when the show is so concentrated on Tim being pretty buffoonish in his antics.
Yeah.
And not to its detriment at all, not to the show's detriment or anything, not to cast a negative light on his performance or anything, because it worked really well for the show. But you needed that kind of sage guide to counter the buffoonery, and the whole concept of the show basically rested on Tim being Tim, and then everyone around him kind of reacting to Tim being Tim, whether it's his kids, his wife, Al, anyone. It's like kind of like he was the center, and then once he interacts with Wilson, this is all from memory, I haven't seen it in a long time. I actually almost bought it on DVD.
Oh really?
Yeah, at Half Price Books, oddly enough. But shut up. Anyway, but once Wilson entered into the scene, that's when you dispel the kind of moral themes of the episode, or you get that guidance, or the basically the moral of the story that's being told. And I really appreciated that, because it was a really, really organic way to bring about the moral center of the story.
Yeah. And it was hidden behind the shtick, or the what's the word? The gimmick,
right,
of him hiding his mouth all the time, which was fun. I remember there was an episode where they went into his house, and they kept his mouth covered the whole time. He would step in front of a plant or something.
Yeah.
I think there's only one episode where they did that. I might be wrong though, but I remember that episode fondly, because I'm like, oh, we're gonna show his face, and they never did.
Nice. I remember when Mike was on the podcast. Who's our co-host who's on sabbatical from the podcast? He's coming back, I swear. Right?
I hope.
Anyway, he talked about how he and his wife were watching Home Improvement lately a lot. This is fairly recently, and just hearing him talk about it made me really want to go back and watch it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, maybe really wish it was on Netflix, but maybe eventually I'll pick up the DVDs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and bring us into the next one.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So this is kind of one of the quintessential neighbor characters in all of televisiondom. basically, and that's more because this television show in itself is an institution in itself. But Ned Flanders,
oh yeah,
from The Simpsons, you can't talk about TV Neighbors without talking about Flanders. And one of the best things about that character is how just straight-laced he is in contrast to The Simpsons and other Springfieldians, because he is this super religious, God-fearing character who is so out of touch with reality. And it's such a joy to see an episode that's centered around Ned Flanders for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And one of the things that always struck me about The Simpsons itself is that whenever it poked fun at religion or whenever it had religion at the center, it was never mean-spirited.
Right.
And that's one of the things that endears about it as well, and endears about the Flanders characters themselves. But Ned in particular, like, there are some really great episodes centered around Ned. There's one in particular that I absolutely love. It's called Hurricane Nettie. Do you remember this one, Tiny?
I don't.
You never really watched The Simpsons, did you?
I did, but never. I only in syndication.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. So Hurricane Nettie is an episode where there's a hurricane that comes to Springfield, and it's kind of awesome because no one's prepared for it. So I think like Homer's in a hammock or something, and then Lisa figures out, because she's smart, she figures out that there's a hurricane coming, so she warns Homer, and then he's like, no, there's never been a hurricane on record. And then like there's some piece of dialogue where it's like, well, yeah, but the records only go back as far as like 1976 when the entire town was swept away in some mysterious high wind thing or whatever. I'm butchering it, but it's just that kind of humor is just really well done and well executed in The Simpsons. But anyway, so in that episode, Flanders is home. Homer always refers to the Flanders as the Flanders is. Anyway, Flanders home in The Simpsons in that episode, and Hurricane Nettie gets destroyed. And it's such a great episode about that character because he is such a friendly and unassuming guy that when the entire town, like his house is the only house that gets destroyed, and so he has this crisis of faith. He has this, he wonders why God has forsaken him, all that, and so the whole town tries to rebuild his house for him, and it's just no one knows what they're doing, so it's all completely shoddy. And so there's this brilliant breakdown that Ned has where he accosts the entire town. And he just goes through everyone, and it's just like he goes off on them. It's so great. Like there's some examples where he just points to people and he screams at them. Like he points at Krusty and says, "Oh, there's the clown. He's the only one of you guys who doesn't make me laugh." And he talks about Lisa, and he's like, it's like, "Oh, what's this? Is that the sound of Buddy in? It must be little Lisa Simpson." Springfield's answer to a question nobody asked.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Oh, and the best one is he points to Mo and he's like, "You are an ugly, hate-filled man." And then Mo just says, "Hey, I may be ugly and hate-filled, but I'm not." What's the third thing he said?
Oh my God!
So anyway, it's a great episode and a great examination or a great platform for that character to kind of go through, and he ends up checking himself into a mental institution, and then the doctors try to provoke him to have another outburst, and like they say like, "Oh, aren't you annoyed by like mosquito bites?" And he's like, "Fun to scratch," and he just finds little things to not be annoyed about.
Oh my God!
Anyway, it's really funny, and Flanders is an icon of the show. He's an important. That's one of the best things about The Simpsons. Really, is that it's an ensemble with so many different like interesting characters throughout the entire town of Springfield.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and did you have something?
Yeah, well, I mean, the best thing about Flanders is that he's the antithesis of Homer Simpson.
Absolutely.
And that's just like, it's perfect for conflict. He's just annoyingly humble,
right,
and perfect in almost every single way, and he's just the antithesis of Homer Simpson, and it just provides, it's a perfect context for comedy.
Absolutely.
To find its way to the surface. My favorite part is just the fact that I love it when Homer borrows something from Flanders because he never borrows it; he just keeps it.
Right.
That's so funny to me because we used to have neighbors that borrowed our stuff, and I mean we always got it back, but yeah, it just made me think of that. I'd be like, I'd be so pissed off if someone did that to me when I watched it as a kid.
Speaking of which, Tiny, your Avatar Blu-ray is right over there.
Oh, is it? Well, I forgot you even had it.
I forgot to watch it.
Yeah,
it's Avatar.
It's not good.
I also want to point out another episode that I can't remember the name of, so I'm vamping here, even though I can edit this out. There's an episode when Flanders failed. It's when he starts the Leftorium store.
That's right.
Yeah, the store for left-handed people, which hashtag respect, as I am a lefty.
Yep. As is my fiance.
Nice.
Which is a recessive gene, I found out recently.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I sure did love Recess as a kid.
Jesus.
That's so dumb.
So hopefully our children won't have the devil hand.
Right. Jesus.
It's a joke.
Anyway, there are a lot of episodes about centered around Flanders, and I encourage everyone to check them out,
Word.
You can watch all of The Simpsons on the FX Now app.
Word, neighborino.
Nice. Tiny, do you want to bring up the next one?
Absolutely.
Nice.
Quagmire. Family Guy.
Nice.
Giggity, giggity. Yeah, Quagmire's I think he's a little more featured than someone like Flanders is.
Yeah.
Because he's part of like the central group. But he's still the quirky, weird, disgusting neighbor.
Right.
His comedy doesn't arise from contrast necessarily, kind of like Flanders does. But Quagmire is often he's like the gross character that you can just kind of use to make the easy jokes, sort of. I don't think Quagmire is very deep. But every once in a while they'll break him out, like the kamikaze episode,
Right.
stuff like that. Every once in a while there's some really good episodes with Quagmire. Yeah, I mean he's not necessarily like the cliche neighbor character, but I like the way they use him on the show. He's like a quick cut character. They cut to him doing something really gross,
Right.
and it's always hilarious.
I agree, and he is the kind of character that, like you said, I think that's more of a reflection on Family Guy being, I guess, less of an ensemble. I mean, you can't really compare it to The Simpsons, even though they are comparable, I guess, but they don't have as big a playground to play with, as The Simpsons has, but he does fill that neighborly, thing. Also, Joe does as well.
Yeah.
Which I can talk about that for a brief second in a little bit, but, so one of my favorite things about Quagmire isn't really his super sex-driven antics or anything, although maybe this is an extension of it, but it's his interactions with Brian.
Those are so great.
They're so, like, the episode, I think one of the episodes when they started, I feel like there's an episode where they just realized, hey, why don't we make Brian and Quagmire hate each other?
Yeah.
And having this episode where Brian learns that Quagmire hates him, it's like gold. It's gold in that series because it's where Brian tries to win Quagmire's friendship, but Quagmire just has no interest in it. And so it's amazing to me because you have Quagmire, who is this morally, like this immoral, kind of reprehensible, sex-crazed maniac person who just completely destroys everything that Brian is as a character in that show. It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. It's where they're having dinner and basically Quagmire just goes off on Brian and he just says like, I'm upfront about who I am. I have sex with a lot of bimbos but at least I'm honest about it. You manipulate girls into thinking that you're some super deep intellectual person, and like he just goes on and on and on, and it is just brutal in the best possible way.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the strongest things about Family Guy for me, is that it can kind of work. Their dynamics that they have, while like I said before, they don't have the depth or breadth of characters as The Simpsons has accumulated over decades of airtime, from which to mine stories from. But the characters that they do are interchangeable. Like, it creates an interchangeability to the plot. So there's episodes where it's like guys' night out, kind of like guys' friends hanging out stuff, or there's a buddy comedy thing in Stewie and Brian. There's a deeper friendship thing in Brian and
Joe?
Peter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In Brian and Peter. And they can do more things with Family Guy than they can with other shows. And so occasionally the neighborly aspect of Quagmire does come out, and it is pretty good. Also, like I said, honorable mention is Joe, because he's actually introduced to the show, I don't know if you remember, Tiny, as the neighbor that Peter is, I think it's that feels inadequate comparing himself to. So they have this kind of rivalry early on in the first couple episodes that Joe is in, and it's a really good dynamic that comes from it, with really Joe and Peter and Quagmire and Cleveland. Yeah,
agreed. We didn't really even mention Cleveland.
Oh, we didn't. Cleveland,
but he was he felt ancillary, really.
He did.
I'm not sure a lot of people really like Cleveland that much.
Yeah,
I mean, he was. Yeah, I don't know.
There are some good Cleveland scenes and sequences and episodes, but yeah, he's never been that fully developed, which makes the fact that he had a spinoff so perplexing to me.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I don't hear people quoting Cleveland.
Right.
Because he just doesn't, I don't think I just never thought he added a lot.
Right. I agree. Yeah. It's never been that good, but when he is working in tandem with Joe and Peter and Quagmire, it works out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Word.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and bring up the next one. It's Kimmy Gibbler from Full House, which we talked about it quite a bit in our Fuller House episode that I had with Sam, who I don't know if he still listens to the podcast.
He better.
He should, yeah. If you're listening, Sam, tweet me right now. Anyway, that was a weird ultimatum. Anyway, and tweet me with hashtag weird ultimatum. So I know that you're listening. Anyway,
oh my God.
This is off the rails. So Kimmy Gibbler, this was an interesting neighborly character. Tiny, you never really watched Full House, right?
Not really.
Okay, so Kimmy in the show was made as this. She's a neighbor who's always intruding on the Tanner family's moments in their situations. And she's kind of a friend of DJ's. I think she's DJ's best friend in the series. It's been a while since I've seen the original series. I've seen Fuller House, all of it. So anyway, she is brought in as this kind of disgusting character. They're always playing her up as the weird character, or the character that none of the Tanners really like, and they always kind of pick on it. It's a little mean-spirited from my memory of it, but it's pretty enjoyable, in its own right. I will say this: never ever lived in a place where neighbors just freely roamed in.
Yeah, me either.
We'll talk more about this.
That was a pre-9/11 thing, I think.
Right. That's a weird thing to invoke 9/11 into this conversation with that.
It is.
But yeah, I actually had conversations with Mike when we were roommates down at USI about it would be nice to kind of have an open door thing, have like a sitcom neighbor thing, but wasn't meant to be.
Right.
Anyway, Kimmy Gibbler, don't really have much else to say about her. Her character is a little better developed in... I can't believe I'm saying this. Her character is a little better developed in Fuller House, because she's actually living in the house now and she's part of the main cast. And it's so much to the point that I feel like her original character in the original series wasn't developed properly enough. She was kind of a one-note kind of character from my memory of it. But that kind of came into play when I was watching Fuller House, because basically anytime Bob Saget came in to get a paycheck on that show in a little cameo, and Kimmy came in, he would like have this. It was like a callback to the original series where they would like act like disgusted with her and be like, "Get out of here, Kimmy," or whatever. And the contrast between the original series, like it fit in the context of the original series, but then seeing it in this one where she's kind of a focal character of it, it just didn't really work.
I bet.
But yeah. But anyway, you can hear my full review of that with Sam in an episode that will be in the show notes. That's my way of saying that I don't remember the number of the episode. Hashtag weird. What was it? Hashtag weird something?
I don't know. That was your thing, man.
I can't remember. The thing Sam's going to tweet me. I don't know. Anyway, Tiny, do you want to bring up the next one?
I do.
So I can stop talking?
One of the most successful TV shows of all time, Seinfeld.
Yes.
Good Neighbor Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
Which you mentioned the open door policy.
Right.
Maybe a bit of a backfire on that show.
Oh yeah.
I always found it weird. Like, why are Jerry and Kramer friends? Like, Kramer's just weird, and he's always screwing things up, and. Like I feel like Jerry got nothing out of that relationship. Mm-hmm. Like Kramer was always coming into his house, eating his food,
right,
and drinking his stuff. Like that's one of the first things he would always do is come in and go to the fridge. Mm-hmm. And it was funny. Like it's very funny, but it's just like, why wasn't Jerry just like, you're an asshole, get out of here. I don't like you. Like it's just I never really understood the dynamic, but it was hilarious.
Right.
Talk about a quirky, weird neighbor. Mm-hmm. Kramer is the pinnacle of that. Mm-hmm. He always has some weird scheme going on. Yeah. He's writing a coffee table book that is a coffee table itself.
And it's about coffee tables.
Yeah. He's sleeping in a hot tub. He's living in the shower. I mean, he just has the weirdest crap, and it's just like, how is this guy still alive and like functioning in a functional society? He's just one of those perplexing characters, but just classically hilarious. Mm-hmm. I think he does to the compliment of Michael Richards. Mm-hmm. Brilliant physical comedian. One
of the best physical comedian performances.
Absolutely.
I think I've ever seen.
But still has amazing writing attached to his character and can deliver some of those classic lines, mm-hmm. Classic hilarious moments. It's funny you mentioned how quirky Kramer is, but at the end of the day, Jerry Seinfeld is incredibly quirky himself.
Right.
He's going through a slew of women throughout mm-hmm. the 9 seasons or whatever it had.
9, yeah.
9. Just dating women serially, basically, right. and breaking up with them for mundane things, mm-hmm. sometimes crazy stuff. But she had man hands. Broke up with her because of that, stuff like that. So, in a way, they complement each other. And I think while Jerry is his quirkiness and oddness is mm-hmm. acceptable and it's more common. Kramer's off the wall, but he totally gets everything Jerry is quirky about.
Right.
He's always in support of Jerry. He's like, oh, she had man hands. You had to break up with her. Okay, move on. It's like, right. It's funny how the depth of the quirkiness of that show, mm-hmm. I guess that's how I'll put it. And I think Kramer was the pinnacle of the quirk.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He was absolutely outstanding. And it's funny because I only recently, within the last year or two, watched the entire series from beginning to end for the first time, just, watching it from beginning to end instead of seeing it in syndication
right.
growing up, basically. And it's so amazing to me that my perception of Kramer was going into it. My perception of him was this crazy, kooky neighbor. And that's what he is, but it never really clicked with me until I saw it in sequence that it's like he's a part of their gang and he's a part of their group, and that's like he's a kind of pivotal member. It's just he is such a quirky character.
Right.
And we've said quirky so many times, but he is such an out there character, and like you said, the physical comedy is just so I don't know how he can possibly move the way that he does.
Oh yeah. He's like a slinky.
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird.
And there's a scene in particular that is so freaking brilliant. I'm struggling to remember the exact context of it, but it's basically where he is basically telling a story about how he commandeered a bus that was out of control. And it's amazing to me because if I remember my trivia correctly, they originally were going to film the sequence and then they like in rehearsal or something, they decided to write it as, well, maybe Kramer just describes it. And it is one of the best comedic scenes I've ever seen.
Nice.
And it is amazing. He is pantomiming it. The writing is so perfect because he's talking about how he's like, he's saying that he had, like, he's commandeering the bus, and, cause I think someone tried to hijack the bus or something. Bus jack the bus. And so he took him out or whatever, and like he's commandeering the bus, and then he's like, what is it? He says something like, and so I like the high point of the entire thing, or the kind of punchline of it, is that he's like, so I have to stop. I'm stopping at all the stops, and then Jerry's like in disbelief. He's like, you kept making the stops, and then Kramer's just like, people kept ringing the bell. And it's so funny. It is one of my favorite Kramer scenes. Another one is in The Marine Biologist, where he's talking about going to the beach and hitting balls into the ocean. But the way that he does it, the way that he performs this, he goes in to Jerry's apartment, and he's pitching this idea to Jerry and George, to basically take the day to go to the beach with him and hit balls into the ocean. The energy he has is so creepy and weird. I'm gonna rip it, and I'm gonna put it in this episode right here, because I cannot possibly do it justice. So here is basically probably my favorite Kramer scene of the entire series.
Hey! Who wants to have some fun? I do. Now, you just saying you want to have fun, or do you really want to have fun?
I really want to have fun. I'm just saying I want to have some fun.
Right now, there are 600 Titleists that I got from the driving range in the trunk of my car. Why don't we drive out to Rockaway and hit them into the ocean? Now picture this. We find a nice sweet spot between the dunes. We take out our drivers, we tee up, and that ball goes sailing up into the sky, holds there for a moment, and then...
And it's hilarious. I loved it.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Kramer is amazing. And,
right. I mean, he's up there with Flanders as
absolutely.
as like one of those legendary neighbors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. So, okay, this is kind of a loaded one. I'm going to go ahead and bring up this next one, which it's kind of hard to say. I'll touch on each of these really briefly. Friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the majority of the show took place in apartments. Obviously, they're going to have some interesting neighbor characters. Real quickly, I'll talk about kind of the lesser discussed ones. First, so Danny, there was an arc in one of the seasons. I can't remember. My superpower is failing me. I remember the episodes. The one with the Yeti and the one with the one with the Yeti, the one with the inappropriate sister. There's several episodes. I don't remember the season. I'm so sorry, guys. I apologize.
I think it was the first season.
Nope.
It wasn't?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope. I think it was like season 4 or 5.
Okay.
Anyway, so this character, I can't remember the actor who played him, but he is this neighbor who, Monica and, it might have been season 3, but Monica and Rachel accidentally fog, like with a fogger, a bug farmer basically.
Yeah.
And so he is this world traveler who had this like long beard, long facial hair, long hair, and they thought he was a Yeti. And then he has an arc that is so funny to me that he's basically this kind of aloof guy who Rachel is kind of attracted to after he shaves all of his facial hair and everything. It's like a 3 or 4 episode run,
Mm-hmm.
where one of the highlights of it is that he's being so nonchalant. He's not paying attention to Rachel, and Rachel thinks that he's playing hard to get, when it's kind of like he doesn't really care. Like they went out once, and he's not really engaging with her in any flirtatious behavior or anything like that. So he invites Monica and Rachel to this party that he's having this housewarming party, and it's like one of the running things is that Rachel is so convinced that he's just playing along with it, and it brings one of my favorite scenes in Doug Benson's entire career. It's where Danny introduces Doug Benson to Rachel as his friend, and then Rachel's like, okay, you can cut the act. I know that you're his wingman, and you're here to basically talk him up and be his wingman and everything. And then Doug Benson says, I don't know what you're talking about. And then his icebreaker to her before all that actually is, so you work at Bloomingdale's? And then he says, my mom calls it Bloomies. And just like that line, that delivery is so hilarious. But anyway, Danny is an interesting character as a neighbor and as a love interest for Rachel, but he is not that talked about in the show. More talked about to a higher degree is Traeger, the super for the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And one episode that I'll just single out for this character is that the one with the ballroom dancing. It's do you remember that one, Tiny?
I do.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it a little bit? Or is there anything?
Yes. Isn't he learning? I remember, if I remember correctly, the super is trying to learn how to dance to impress his wife who left him.
No, he's to impress a female super that he has a crush on.
That's right.
Because there is a ball for supers called the Super Ball, I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, you remember it a lot better than I do.
Oh yes.
But doesn't he do the dancing lessons with Joey?
Yeah.
Right.
Because he threatens to have Rachel and Monica evicted, but
right.
Yeah, it's such a funny gag throughout the entire episode. And what's more fun about it is the fact that Joey's into it.
Right.
He's so into it. It's really enjoyable. And then I'll kind of talk on these two really quickly. Mr. Heckles, who was played by Larry Hankin in the early seasons. Mm-hmm. And it leads to one of my favorite moments in the entire series. It's the one where the episode is the one where Heckles dies.
Right.
And it's where Kramer, Chandler has this kind of weird, like, existential crisis where he doesn't know what he wants to do, and he's wasted his life. He's afraid that he's breaking up with all these girls for the wrong reasons, and being like just being too picky, and he doesn't want to end up like Mr. Heckles, their downstairs neighbor, who died alone in a kind of hoarder-esque apartment. And it's this really unique episode. It's kind of a really heartfelt episode, too. And I know I've talked about it in the podcast before, but it's such a touching episode because it's where one of our characters is connecting with a character who isn't even on screen. The character's dead throughout the episode. Mm-hmm. And it's a really heartfelt episode. And it's really, I don't know. I'm afraid to watch it now because I'm older, and I'm afraid to watch it and actually, relate to Chandler's character. That's one of the funny as an aside, that's one of the funny things about Friends is I'm terrified to rewatch it again because I'm terrified of relating to some of the characteristics of some of the characters.
Right.
Because I watched it at such a pivotal age where I was a teenager, and I was kind of like, oh, this is what grown-ups are like, and now I'm like, oh, this is what they meant.
Now it's real.
Yeah. And finally, the most talked about Friends neighbor character, Ugly Naked Guy, mm-hmm. which is such a mean-spirited thing.
It is.
But I did appreciate how Ugly Naked Guy eventually led to Ross being a neighbor and like getting the apartment. Like they have a whole episode where he's trying to get the apartment from Ugly Naked Guy. So you have this character who through like 5-6 seasons is just this neighbor that they keep like referencing. And then there's an episode where it's not only that he doesn't become a character because it doesn't have any like scenes, but like his quirk, his aura, becomes a big part of another character, or not becomes a big part of it, but becomes an inciting thing about the plot. So in the episode, Ross takes the apartment, and that's when he learns the truth about Chandler and Monica, and it's such a great way to kind of bring the Ugly Naked Guy character full circle. So anyway, right. Do you have any comments on any of these, Tony?
That just made me think of when Ross goes, "My best friend and my sister," and then he's like, "I love her." He's like, my best friend and my sister. I don't know. That made me think of that.
Yeah.
I love that part. Ross is so funny.
Oh, he's so great. And that season, or that season in particular, he's so... David Schwimmer seems like he had so much fun with it because that season in particular, he's like off the deep end crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Ugly Naked Guy, I think, is the most interesting because, like you said, he's just this kind of recurring gag throughout the show,
right.
But they turn him into something... You know, he plays an important role at some point in the show. It's just kind of funny that they went that route. They could have just kept drawing from that well and getting the easy laugh, but they they decided to turn it into something.
Exactly. And I will be remiss if I don't mention that he also did have a big part in the episode, the one with the giant poking device.
Oh yeah,
which is pretty funny.
Right.
Yeah. So, do you want to bring us to the next one? We have two more.
Gladly.
Awesome.
Another family-driven sitcom, Family Matters. Steve Urkel, another very famous, quirky, goofy neighbor character. But it's funny because I think initially the first season, or maybe the first couple of seasons, Steve Urkel was supposed to be like an outside character. Like he was only supposed to show up like every couple episodes and just say a couple silly lines and be gone. But people just focused in on him, and the fans spoke, if you will, and he turned into one of the main characters.
Oh, absolutely.
He was in like almost every episode, I think, after that. And he's the show Family Matters was very simple, cheesy. You pretty much knew where a lot of the stories were going, a lot of family values, obviously. And Steve Urkel was not a very complicated character. He did the same thing every episode. He would pine after the daughter. I don't even remember her name.
I don't remember it either.
Gosh, it's been so long since I've seen any Family Matters. I don't even know if it's on in syndication anywhere anymore.
I don't know either.
It might be.
It might be available to stream somewhere. They might have some episodes on like Hulu, but I don't know.
I hope they do because I genuinely enjoyed it as a kid. But yeah, he would pine after the daughter of the main family, and then he would do some crazy experiment that would go really well for about 10 seconds, and then it would screw up, and something would blow up, or he'd hurt himself, or something goofy. So he really was not a deep character. Like I said, he kind of just did the same thing every episode. I think the good parts of Family Matters was when they did something heartfelt. One of the kids would screw up, and the cop from Die Hard would set him straight.
The cop from Die Hard.
I can't remember any of the character names or the actors. That's bad.
That's fine.
But I mean, Urkel is, everyone knows who Steve Urkel is.
Right.
To this day. It's kind of goofy. So he was a very, the show I don't think was very deep, but sometimes there would be something that, it was the moments where the show got serious, and all the jokes were very commonplace and very, you could see them coming a mile away. I don't think anything was especially incredible or standalone about the comedy of the show. But I think the moments where something serious happened, I think you actually got some pretty quality television out of those moments. And they did that pretty regularly. I appreciated the show in those moments as a kid. So yeah, Urkel, everyone knows who Urkel is, and like I said, he's just such a simple character. But just because of his catchphrase, and he is unique in the fact that no one else is like Steve Urkel. That voice, his appearance with the glasses, and his catchphrase, he was a catchphrase. He was a personified catchphrase. That's what Steve Urkel was.
Exactly.
And that was okay.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't really watch it that much, but by the way, it's Reginald Vell Johnson.
There you go.
He played the main character.
I don't even remember the family.
Carl Winslow.
Winslow, that's right.
So anyway, this show was a spinoff of Perfect Strangers.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, which was one of the longest running sitcoms with an African American family at its center. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was originally that was one of the big things about it. Like this was supposed to be a big cultural cultural show in that it featured a black family at the center of it,
Right.
and that's something that wasn't on TV that much at the time. And part of what a lot of issues that arose out of it was that it immediately became the Urkel show, and that kind of just undermined what it was originally going to be focused on, and that's really a shame.
Right.
But yeah, the Key and Peele did a freaking beautiful sketch, beautiful sketch about this, with Jordan Peele playing Reginald Val Johnson.
Nice.
But yeah, I can't speak that much about Family Matters. The one thing I do remember is I think the older son of the family is talking to a girl that he's going to go on a date with or something, and he says something along the lines of, "Let's go see a movie." What's that one movie called? JFK. JFK.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, that always stuck with me for some reason. But
That's silly.
see, and that's so weird. Like, I'm reading the quotes on IMDb, and spoilers for the last lines of the series, basically.
Wow.
Should I say this?
Sure.
Okay. It's just like Steve Urkel, like the last lines of the entire series is Steve Urkel saying, "Do I get a welcome home kiss?" And Laura saying, "On one condition." Steve Urkel says, "What's that?" Laura says, "That you'll never go into outer space again." Because this show became something so different.
It did.
From what it was supposed to. I remember that Mike talked very passionately about how off the mark this show became and how terrible it became because of Urkel at the center of it. And it's really a shame.
There's no nuance to Urkel.
Right.
He's all style and no substance.
Right.
And that is unfortunate.
Yep. So anyway, having said that, I don't have much else to bring into it. So should I round us out?
I think you should.
All right. So this one was one that wasn't really bandied about when talking about favorite TV neighbors when I threw it out on Facebook and Twitter. But Lucille 2 from Arrested Development.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things about it, like that character becomes such played by Liza Minnelli, she becomes such a figure in Buster's storyline throughout the series run.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I really like about it is the dynamic between her and Lucille Bluth, because they have, there's such a rivalry to them, but in the beginning, it's set up that Lucille 2 is, very kind on the Bluth family, and for some reason Lucille Bluth just hates her.
Yeah.
There's one of the things that I need to go back and rewatch Arrested Development, but one of the things that stuck out to me in my memory of it is that the scene where they basically talk about how Lucille it's just a quick gag, but Lucille Bluth expanded her bathroom or something to where it made Lucille 2's kitchen or something so small. And it was there's just a scene where Lucille 2 has no idea what's going on, has no idea that there's such a vehement anger toward her from Lucille Bluth. So it's just there's these little things where she's so confused about the behavior of it and she doesn't understand. So she's a good character, and the Spouts of Vertigo also in it. It's just so fun. Such a fun character to have as somewhat of a foil to Lucille Bluth, in that just completely wacky family dynamic in the entire series. Just, God, that's such a great show.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's made extra funny just by the fact that Lucille 2 is played by a pop culture icon like Liza Minnelli. That's it's so funny they got someone so famous to play that role.
Right.
Where she just plays second fiddle to this other character the whole time, and
exactly.
It is, and she's goofy, and they make some inside jokes. There's one point where the song New York, New York comes on, and she's like, they always remember Sinatra, or something like that, because she was the first person to actually sing that song in the musical.
That's right.
Yeah, but it's just, there's so many great subtle jokes in that show.
That's so great.
Yeah, I loved Lucille too as well. She was it was just so funny how it was always her name is the same. Like that's just so brilliant. Her name is the same as Buster's mom. It's like he certainly has a type, doesn't she?
Right.
It's just just a brilliant show.
Oh yeah, and the fact that they refer to her as Lucille too.
Right.
It's just so funny.
Yeah.
So hilarious. So great.
I don't even remember what her character's last name is. Did they ever reveal it?
Lucille Austero.
Austero, that's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They just call her Lucille too.
Right. It's so great.
It's funny.
So, okay, so that basically rounds us out for this topic for this week. Before we get to Potpourri, which for first-time listeners, Potpourri is a section of the podcast where we talk about whatever we want as long as it smells good, things we're watching, things we've watched, things we're looking forward to, news items, although that's kind of out of date because we have a news segment. Anyway, before we get to that, on the Facebook page at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer, I threw out a question asking everyone what TV neighbors they would come to mind when recording this episode. So, friend of the show, Brandon Yoder from Snapshot Productions, a listener to Anthology who said that he would email Anthology, but he never did. He will eventually, I'm sure. Anyway, so he had a few, and he said, this was a really great comment. He said, Friends has some great ones. Heckles, Trigger, Ugly Naked Guy. If you want to go old school, you could do Rhoda from Mary Tyler Moore, or Fred and Ethel Mertz from I Love Lucy, or Gladys from Bewitched, or any number of people from Three's Company that lived in that apartment complex. Last thought, Ray's family from Everybody Loves Raymond. I wasn't a huge fan of the show, but the whole cornerstone of the series was that they lived across the street. I loved the diversity of his picks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I need to go back and just watch all of these classic like sitcoms because it is such a blind spot for me.
Right.
Because I've never seen Mary Tyler Moore, never seen I Love Lucy, never seen Bewitched. I've desperately wanted to see Three's Company, but I've just never seen it. That might be like a project for me to do in the future. Because I'm just so out of touch with a lot of that. But yeah, I told him that, and I said that, I said, time to start some podcasts to cover Bewitched and I Love Lucy, I guess. And he said, I'd listen to it, and I was really proud of this, Tiny.
Oh, God.
I said, the Bewatched podcast. So if anyone wants to start a Bewitched podcast, and you can use that title, and give me credit because I think that is brilliant.
Oh my God.
Bewatched. Yeah? Right?
Yeah.
So brilliant. Tiny can't even speak.
He was on point with Fred and Ethel, though. I used to watch some I Love Lucy.
Nice.
Yeah, they were some
iconic show.
Classic.
Yeah.
Fred and Ethel.
Nice. I'll report back in the future about that.
Nice.
Around the time I talk about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and the Normal Heart. So Robert Feckus, friend and frequent guest of the podcast, he commented with the big heads from Rocko's Modern Life. Also, may not count, but Roger from American Dad. He lives in the attic, though.
He's basically the goofy neighbor.
Well, okay, he is, but let's keep this to characters that live outside of the blueprints of the domicile of the main cast. I mean,
fine.
Yeah, come on.
It's a technicality.
Feckus. No, it's not. It's unacceptable. I put a question out on Facebook, and Feckus decided to just completely disregard it. So I don't know.
Most frequent guest.
Yeah. Oof. Love you, Feckus. Have fun in Vegas.
Yeah. Win some money for me.
Yes, me too. Seriously, the donate button on obsessiveviewer.com. And I forgot to bring this up in the main list, but that his comment, because I don't remember much about Rocko's Modern Life.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, and a lot of people our age love it. But that kind of reminded me of Mr. Dink from Doug. Did you ever watch Doug?
Oh, I watched Doug. I do not remember that.
Really? He's the goofy neighbor that Doug is friends with who... He always weirdly invites him into his house and has some... I think he's an inventor, maybe?
Okay.
Or he always has some weird, off-the-wall things. It's really a fun dynamic. Those, like, Doug and Rugrats are on Hulu, and I need to just sit down and watch them and, remember my childhood. Next up on the comments are Craig Lane from Intermission Podcast said, I'm always partial to the Flanders or the King of the Hills, the Gribbles.
Yeah, that would have been a good mention. I didn't really watch that show that much.
Me neither. I hardly ever watched it.
Yeah.
So I've got no context for it. So they were good.
Yeah, I mean, they'd get together. It was the classic yip thing. They'd like stand out by the fence and drink beer and just talk about random things.
Right.
It was funny.
Nice. You're listening to the Obsessive Euro podcast. Todd Nix commented with Ned Flanders with an exclamation point. Our friend Alex from ObsessiveBookNerd.com said Wilson from Home Improvement.
Yep.
And I replied with, oh, ha, 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 ha. And I put, that's my text impression of Tim Allen's weird grunting noise thing. And then on, we have so many. Pat Kuhn from The Nerds You're Looking For podcast at thenerdspodcast.com, and who's going to have hopefully a short film at Shocktober in Irvington. I'm putting him on the hook for that. And he said Bob Pinciotti. I've not seen that 70s show in forever.
I never watched that show.
Yeah, it's all on Netflix. Mike is a huge fan of it, and then Pat went on to say that apparently Will Forte was a producer on a few seasons of it and wrote one of Pat's favorite episodes, which that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, that makes me really want to go and watch the show for the first time.
Huh.
And then finally for Facebook, and then I have some tweets, and then we'll get on to Potpourri. Patrick Hogan said Kimmy Gibbler, Mr. Feeney, Wilson, and Urkel. And yeah, Mr. Feeney is an interesting choice. I wanted to put him on the list, but he's more of a mentor than a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
You can argue that he's an Eric. He's a neighbor for Eric because Eric is always bugging him. But yeah. Anyway, okay. So really quickly, tweets. Our friend Molly said clearly Wilson and Mr. Wilson. Whoa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then she posted a picture of like an Illuminati thing. And she's at Multiply, so bug her. And this guy Mike at I am Mike White on Twitter. I don't know.
Never heard of him.
Oh, I miss the times when those words were spoken on this podcast. Anyway, he said Sam from Clarissa Explains It All. Totally forgot about that character.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that in such a long time.
Yeah, me either.
Yep. And Tony, friend of the show and gift card winner from the show at Indiana Geeking, said, I've seen it mentioned before, but Wilson from Home Improvement will always get my vote. Yep. Josh at Movie Guys Josh, who is a co-host on Intermission Podcast with Craig. He said Ugly Naked Guy from Friends. Dylan Shuck at Shuckster. He is the host of the Watch and Talk, said Wilson. And finally, Paul Elliott at Paul Elliott _316 and also at Seinfeld Madness, said the K-Man, of course, Kramer.
The K-Man.
Oh yeah. Check out his, Seinfeld bracket site, seinfeldmadness.wordpress.com. Okay. So we are at a long time in this recording.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and go on to Potpourri. Once again, for first-time listeners, this is the part of the podcast where we wind down the episode and share something that we've watched or something that we're looking forward to kind of wind down the episode. So, Tiny, do you want to get us kicked off?
Absolutely.
Nice.
I recently watched the film 13 Hours, which was directed by Michael Bay.
Nice.
It's about the attack on the American embassy in Benghazi in 2012, I believe. So it's basically it's not real time, but it has this kind of this ticking clock feel to it.
Okay.
For those who don't know, there was an ambassador in the city of Benghazi, which is in Libya, and the embassy was attacked and he was murdered, and there's tons of political controversy wrapped up in the unfortunate tragedy. But there's a really amazing story about some contractors who were all former military that were operating at a secret CIA base, which was also in Benghazi, and like a mile away from the embassy. And, you know, when they heard what was going on at the embassy, they took action and tried to defend all of the American citizens that were in Libya, either through the embassy or through the CIA, the secret base they had there, sort of. And it's just this incredibly harrowing, really amazing story. It reminded me a little bit of Zero Dark 30, and then I wonder how accurate all this is, because we're talking about people who are working for the CIA. Obviously, all kinds of secrecy wrapped up in that.
Right.
But even if it's not entirely true, it's a great story, and I really enjoyed it. It also reminded me a little bit of Lone Survivor.
Okay. Which
Which I was not incredibly satisfied with.
Right.
I liked parts of it, but I feel like Michael Bay and Peter Berg are becoming very synonymous, very similar directors, which is unfortunate because I feel like Pete Berg had a very good style early on in his directing career, and he's gotten more and more Michael Bay-ish with
Battleship,
and
Lone Survivor.
I feel he's really gotten into the slow motion stuff, and so I'm a little dissatisfied with that. And so whenever I see a Michael Bay movie, I'm never, I'm not necessarily all that excited.
Sure.
But I think this movie outshined Lone Survivor pretty well.
Nice.
I feel like the characters were just better. I mean, and I don't. It's funny because you're talking about in Lone Survivor a group of Navy SEALs. You know, they're talking about military guys who served together for years, and you expect to really connect to that cohesiveness, and I did to an extent in Lone Survivor, but I was so much more satisfied with the 6 characters that worked together in this movie, and I think part of the reason is the way the movie was filmed, which was really done. Like I said, it kind of had this like clicking talk. Okay. Ticking clock feel to it.
I said okay, like that made any kind of sense.
Oh, man. But there's this conflict taking place where it's these 6 guys against half of a city, it feels like. And they're just... It feels like a mission in a Call of Duty game.
Okay.
So, I mean, the action, I just absolutely loved it. It's 6 guys up on rooftops defending this base against hundreds of attackers, and it seems very implausible. But again, I don't know what's true and what wasn't, but it just had this really gung ho feel to it that I just immediately latched onto, and I just fell in love with the action, and I was just there for it, and I was like, I'm into this movie. I can't wait to see what happens and how this ends, and just the action was just really satisfying for me.
Nice. I
really dug the movie. Of course, it has its flaws. There's the classic Michael Bay. Just the camera does not always have to be moving. You can just set it down and just let the actors do their thing. You don't have to put it on a dolly for every single second of the movie. It gets a little annoying, but at the end of the day, you're talking about an action movie, and can't blame him too much. I don't know. It just gets on my nerves sometimes. Yeah. So it does have its flaws. I was so happy to see John Krasinski, Jim Halpert, be a leading man. He was. Well, I mean.
I was making a face because of Jim.
Oh, because he always makes a face, in the show, yeah. I was just really happy to see him in that kind of role. I hadn't seen him in anything like that before. He packed on a ton of muscle, and he looked and played the part very well. I was very satisfied to see that. Speaking of actors I've been dying to see as somewhat of a lead, James Badge Dale. I think you and I have been a fan of his since 24.
Oh yeah.
I've always thought he's a great actor. And he's always had this kind of character role to him, just a character actor kind of guy.
Yeah, like action character actor.
Yeah, like Iron Man 3.
Yeah, Iron Man 3, World War Z.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a lot of chance to show off his acting chops. But he almost like kind of shared the lead with John Krasinski in this movie. Did a phenomenal job. Also got incredibly jacked for the movie. looked great, and just I enjoyed the fact that these weren't just like muscle bound meatheads who were just had no depth to them. These guys actually, they talked about their families and they had existential crises. I appreciated the work that the actors put in.
Nice.
And some of the other main actors are also not really leading guys. David Denman from The Office, most famously from The Office, Pablo Schreiber from The Wire. These just aren't really your kind of leading guys. And I think that was such a cool choice from Michael Bay and the casting director. It's just really cool to see those guys nailing roles as like leading action guys. It was so cool. I really appreciated that.
Nice.
At the end of the day, it's a Michael Bay movie.
Sure.
But you know what? Sometimes I'm in the mood for a Michael Bay movie.
Right.
So I really enjoyed 13 Hours. I'd probably give it a very solid 7.
Nice.
Maybe 7.5. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Awesome. Well, I will have to check that out. Like, I was going through Google Play to see what all they had for rent, because it had been a while since I rented anything from Google Play. And I thought about renting it, so I thought about it. I ended up renting Midnight Special instead. I'll talk about that on a later podcast after I see it. But
cool.
Anyway, cool. Well, good job. For my potpourri, much like yours, much like 13 Hours, nothing at all really about it. I saw Finding Dory, the latest Disney Pixar movie. So it's funny because it's so weird. I had this kind of thought when I went into the theater for Finding Dory. I kind of realized that in the back of my mind, I went in thinking, this is the first Pixar movie I've seen in the theater since The Good Dinosaur. And that movie just did not, it might be the worst Pixar movie I've seen.
Wow.
Like, I had such a bad reaction to it. It was not good. It was just kind of really, I've talked about it before. It was just very, lacked of focus in it, much like my review of it just now. But, so Finding Dory, I went into it. I'm a Pixar fanboy. I love Pixar. Finding Nemo is one of my favorite Pixar movies. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's
oh my god.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've got an ocean of puns here. But no, it's really great, and it's one of my favorite Pixar movies. So I kind of made sure I went into Finding Dory with low expectations. Like a lot of people kind of rag on Pixar. Not really rag on Pixar, but there's a lot of debate over whether or not Pixar is really going to come back to the top of their game, because Inside Out really bought them a lot of favor after, like, Monsters University and Brave.
Bunch of sequels.
Cars 2, yeah. And so you have Inside Out and then The Good Dinosaur, which was just not good. And then so now Finding Dory, it's like it's kind of shaky that in one year they had a really great, one of their best movies in Inside Out, and then one of their worst, Good Dinosaur. So you kind of go into Finding Dory thinking like, okay, this is a sequel.
Yeah.
Which one's it going to be? Is it going to be Cars 2, or is it going to be, The Incredibles? Is it going to be good? So that's just I'm long-winded here, but I liked it.
Nice.
I liked it quite a bit. It was not the sequel machine Pixar that Cars 2 was. It told a really good story about living with someone with a mental illness, parenting someone that's developmentally different, and those kinds of stories really came through really well. It was really well done in that respect. There's a combination of kind of flashbacks as Dory is kind of remembering bits and pieces of her family to kind of guide her in finding them. That it's just really touching. It's really, really touching. And I will go on record and say that I think that, like, child Dory in the flashbacks may be one of the cutest, maybe the cutest cartoon character I've ever seen.
Wow.
So adorable. But there's some really interesting kind of heavy stuff in it when, I can't really spoil anything, but kind of going through, kind of like that theme of having a character, like having a child or having someone in your life who's different from you, who you have to make sure, is properly cared for.
Okay.
And it's a really strong narrative in that respect. And what I also appreciated about it is that despite the name, despite the title, it's not as much of a retread of the first movie as you would think, because the movie is about her trying to find her family. And so you would think, like, okay, there's going to be another race across the ocean to find where she came from, basically. That's not necessarily how it is. And it was really interesting to see them kind of play with a new area, basically. I won't really give it away because I don't know what was all in the trailers because I kind of avoided them. But instead of traversing the whole ocean, she finds out she came from a place, and then they explore that place, like a specific place. And it's really heartfelt in some parts. Some of the plot elements kind of seem a little convenient and didn't really have that like classic Pixar characters in turmoil. How are they going to get through it? Kind of plotting that is something that I love so much about Pixar itself. Some of that's a little lost because some of the situations are kind of easily gotten out of by pure chance or coincidence, or convenience. And that was kind of a bummer, but I still enjoyed the ride. It was really interesting to see these characters in this environment and in this story, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And on the Pixar emotion meter, I got a little teary-eyed in some places. I didn't like cry like I did with Toy Story 3, but it was still, a little dusty.
Nice.
Yeah. Tiny.
I'll see it at some point.
Nice.
I enjoy Pixar a ton. They're great. I'm not as big of a fan as you are. I haven't seen it yet. There's some other Pixar movies I haven't even seen yet. I haven't seen Brave yet.
Oh, okay.
Some other stuff. So I'll get around to it eventually. I love Finding Nemo. How can you not love Finding Nemo?
Oh, yeah.
I think there are big, tough, tattoo-covered bikers who love Finding Nemo. So, yeah, I'll see it eventually, and I look forward to it.
Nice. As you see on my shelf over there, right next to the Halloween box set, to the right of Halloween and to the left of Game of Thrones are all my Pixar DVDs.
That's an interesting pairing.
Blu-rays. Yeah, it's weird. So if you want to borrow any of them, go right ahead.
Right on.
So that's Finding Dory, and what are we doing next week, Tony? Ghostbusters?
Ghostbusters review
also, and I think after that we're going to have an extended Potpourri. It's been a while. So, again, thank you guys so much for listening. And again, seriously, even if you don't even consider this a plug for my solo podcast, you don't even have to listen to it or care about what I do on the side or anything. Do yourself a favor and go on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. It's all over the place. Season 1, episode 22 of The Twilight Zone. The monsters are due on Maple Street. Watch it because it was astounding.
Nice.
And I hope I did not build it up way too much. So that does it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, so I'm recording this as I'm editing it. In lieu of an outtake stinger for the episode, here is some newly recorded stuff. This episode was actually recorded a couple weeks ago, and it's going to be put up pretty later than usual. So, as such, this news stuff that we've been doing is pretty out of date. I just want to mention real quickly that the MoviePass news, basically, on the 12th of July, so like 5 days ago, as of this recording, MoviePass announced new monthly pricing tiers. So, I just want to run through this really quickly. According to Engadget, I'll put the link in the show notes. Tier 1 markets, which apparently that's markets with each area or each city is judged by the amount of people, I guess, in it. So they have 3 tiers for it. So Tier 1 markets would be $15 for 2 movies, $22 for 3 movies, and $40 for unlimited. Tier 2 markets are $18 for 2 movies with MoviePass. Obviously, this is what it means. You only get 2 movies for $18 a month. $27 for 3 movies or $45 for unlimited. And Tier 3 markets, which I'm assuming is going to be like New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago maybe, $21 for 2 movies, $31 for 3 movies, $50 for unlimited. Personally, I think that's pretty okay. I'd be more than happy to pay $40, $45, or $50 for unlimited movies. And apparently they're going to be dropping the 24-hour limit, which is freaking awesome. Because as of right now, say I see a movie Saturday night at 9 o'clock. I have to wait until Sunday night at 9 o'clock or later to see another movie, which sucks because if you work on Mondays, that's a problem. So if they're going to phase that out or drop that out entirely, holy crap, that would be a game changer, and I don't know how they would be able to sustain themselves with that, but we'll see. So anyway, I wanted to add that, and also a couple things as well. As we mentioned, Shocktober and Irvington tickets are on sale, and one thing that I got set up after we recorded this episode is that if you go to the website for buying tickets for Shocktober in Irvington, which you can find at shocktoberandirvington.com, when you go to buy your ticket, if you are a listener to this podcast, if you are hearing this right now, go to enter promotional code and put podcast1. That's podcast, the number 1, and that'll get you $1 off your ticket to Shocktober in Irvington. Just an added bonus for podcast listeners, because I know that in years past we've had people that listen to the podcast, obviously come to the show, and we wanted to reward you guys for that as well. So let's see. Okay, and then finally, I have been going to Indy Film Fest, so that's why this episode is coming up a little late, and I want to just give you the caveat that next week's episode is probably going to be the same way, our review of Ghostbusters, because Indy Film Fest was kind enough to give me a very last minute, due to me, a very last minute all access pass for the podcast. So basically, I emailed them, and then like the day before the festival started, and they were very gracious enough to give me a pass. So I'm very thankful to them for that. And I just wanted to just say, so I'm posting this Sunday morning, the first Sunday morning of the festival. So the festival is running Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Please go to it. It's a really cool festival, and each ticket or each screening costs $10. Totally worth it. It's comparable to obviously a theater ticket at one of the big chains, maybe even a little less if you're, who knows prices. Anyway, it might actually be a little cheaper, and these are all movies that you may never get a chance to see, and they're movies that you don't like. They may never get distribution, and what attracts me to them is that these are all passion projects by the filmmakers. These are people sunk all kinds of money, time, commitment to these things, and it's not like the studio-backed, the studio system. It's all independent films. It's incredible, and I highly recommend checking it out. On Friday, they're going to be screening a film starring Chris Pine, Ben Foster, as two brothers that are bank robbers. It's called Hell or High Water. I've seen the trailer a dozen times now, having gone to the festival the last couple days, and it looks phenomenal. It looks awesome, so go check that out. And also, I just want to mention a couple movies that I've seen so far. And I may do maybe a solo bonus episode just talking all about the festival if you guys are into that after it's over with, because Tiny's not going to be able to make it because he's not going to be able to make it to the festival because he's going to Florida for vacation. So anyway, Indie Film Fest, it's awesome. Go check it out. I've seen several movies at this point, and I want to comment on a couple of them because you can still see them as of when I release this. So you'll have the chance to go see it if you want to. But there's one feature that I highly recommend. It's called The Invisible Patients. It follows this nurse practitioner who lives in Evansville, who it's about a year and a half of her life as a nurse practitioner, and they follow 4 different patients that she goes to see in-home care. And just the way that the documentary is put together and the way that it's the narrative finds itself in it is so just amazing and really special. It resonated with me on a pretty deep level because, as I'm sure you guys know, or I've mentioned on the podcast before, my father passed away in February, and for about the last year of his life, he had in-home healthcare. He had nurse practitioners come take care of him, check all of his stuff. About, I think it was once a week, and then eventually, as he got worse, that was amplified, or that was changed. But so seeing this a documentary about that profession and those people, as in particular this one nurse practitioner, it really resonated with me because I know firsthand that that level of care. In-home care for patients that are cognitive of it being nearing the end, and I don't know, it's a lot to deal with, and the people in that field have a lot of my respect because I know firsthand that my dad really appreciated and enjoyed when they came to visit, and they had such a good rapport, and yeah, so that documentary is called The Invisible Patients. You can check it out at you can check out information about it at invisiblepatients.com. And it's going to screen again on Thursday, July 21st at 7 p.m. at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. You can check that out at indyfilmfest.org, and that's where you can buy tickets and everything for it. I highly recommend it. It's seriously such a spectacular documentary. And also, friends of the show, Michael Goldberg and Dave Chan, they have a short film that's playing at Indy Film Fest right now. It's called Rye Manhattan. You heard them talk about it when they were last on the podcast. And I saw it today, and it's such a fun movie. And it's really special. I would definitely recommend going to check it out. It's screening Wednesday, July 20th at 7 p.m. As part of the special Hoosier Shorts block. And it's also screening on Wednesday, July 20th in the Giggle Fits block of short films at 1:30 p.m. And when I went to go see it today in the Giggle Fits one, it was awesome because the theater was packed. Like the screening was really, really packed, and it played really well to a crowd. So I'm really happy for Michael and Dave. And you should also check out their podcast, Surefire Podcast, because it has a lot of really cool insight into the making of both their collaboration, their history, and the making of their first feature film, Surefire. So check that out, surefirepodcast.com, Rye Manhattan, at Indie Film Fest, and just check out Indie Film Fest in general because they're really cool. It's a really cool organization, all volunteer run. They have a spectacular lineup this year, and I'm really looking forward to checking out more. So, having said all that, thank you guys for listening. Once again, you can check out Indie Film Fest at indyfilmfest.org, and please go to Shocktober in Irvington, shocktoberinirvington.com. Go to the link to buy your tickets. And remember, put podcast and the number 1 to get $1 off for a special promotion for our podcast listeners. So without further ado, thank you guys, and we'll see you next week for our review of Ghostbusters, which I'm hearing is pretty good. So look forward to that, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.